Isabela is the largest island in the Galapagos. It contains Sierra Negra, the volcano, Puerto Villamil, which holds around a little over 2,000 people. It also holds Las Tintoreras, which is one of the most visited places on Isabela Island. To get there, it's about 10 minutes from the port, and it's an island area, an inlet that is mainly formed by lava
Oh,
rocks. It gets its name from the white-tipped shark, locally known as Tintoreras. It is a great place to observe the Galapagos penguins, which nest in this area depending on the season. Unfortunately, while we went kayaking, I was not able to see them, but I saw sea lions, sea turtles, and sharks in this area as well.
mm.
The blue waters were very, very calm, so it was very easy and very peaceful to kayak. You could see the mangroves and the lava rocks.
Tutora. Tutora. Oh.
You could see the
No.
sea turtles.
Aw.
The sea lions like to play in the mangroves. Now, I booked this tour through Nature Galapagos, and kayaking is one of the best ways to explore Las Tintoreras and Isabela, especially if you have limited mobility. This kayak was a double kayak, so if you have some issues with upper body strength, it is also great because the guide or the person behind you can steer the kayak and give some of the manpower for the kayak. Now, after we went kayaking, we went back to Isabela and I got to see some of the animals. You could see the iguanas on Isabela. We got our wetsuits on, and then we went to the dock at Puerto Villamil. We saw some sea lions on the way. They just like to hang out. We went to the dock and we went snorkeling. Snorkeling again is one of my favorite activities when I go on trips. And this was perfect because it wasn't far. We didn't have to take a boat. It was right around the dock at Isabela. Now, unfortunately, in this area, especially because there are so many people that also are snorkeling in the same area, the water gets a little bit murky and a little bit cloudy. So it's kind of difficult to see some of the fish and some of the marine wildlife that is there. At the beginning of this snorkeling trip, I had some issues with my mask and I kept having to readjust it. And the current was also very, very strong in this area, in this inlet area. So you can see the camera gets a little bit shaky at some points. It was nice to have this private tour instead of snorkeling in a group because I was with one person, I was with my guide, and it was easier to follow him, easier to see things, and easier to be able to navigate in the waters. You can see some of the mangroves, and you can see the dock in the snorkeling dock in the distance, the lava rocks that are formed around this area. The water at some points is very shallow, as you can see, so that's why the water is a little bit more murky because you're kicking up some of the sediment as you are going along. Lots of beautiful coral and sea moss. The guide picked up a sea urchin and the fish around it were playing with it. Just so many beautiful fish. We saw a lot of rainbow fish in this area. Lots of coral. Here's where you can see the visibility just gets a lot lower the further out that you get. And the water also starts to get a lot deeper. There were a lot of rocks and a lot of reefs in this area that you had to navigate and swim through. Sometimes you can see seahorses in this area as well, but unfortunately we did not see any on this day. You can see my guide pointing, and at this point you can't really see what he's pointing at because of the visibility and the murkiness, but when you got closer you can see this beautiful sea turtle just swimming along. And we were just floating on by. And at this point, I was floating, and the water current was just carrying me because I didn't want to disturb the sea turtle. My guide is pointing to go this way, and I look down, and there's another sea turtle right underneath me that I didn't even notice was there. The guide asked for the camera so he could dive a little bit deeper to see some of the marine life that was closer to the bottom. So he dove deeper. You can see a starfish, you can see another starfish and a rainbow fish swim by. You can also see a pufferfish. And there I am in my snorkel gear. We continued on. Again, you had to navigate in between some of these rocks sometimes, which is kind of difficult. And you have to be careful not to actually touch the rocks and disturb the wildlife. As I said in one of the other videos, it is important, and they take really great care in respecting the wildlife and not touching the wildlife and not touching the marine life. They want to preserve the ocean and preserve the nature. But it was very cool and very interesting to navigate and swim through these rocks. You can see the starfish that the guide was pointing to. Gorgeous, bright orange starfish. A lot of coral. And a lot of algae on the rocks as we swam forward. Now the water in the Galapagos is actually pretty cold. That is why when you snorkel, you wear your wetsuit. I would highly recommend either bringing a wetsuit or renting one from one of the swim or dive shops if you go snorkeling. The water is very chilly. You can see also the mangroves grow out of the water and are growing out of the rocks, so you have to navigate in between those as well. Swimming over some of the rocks. Now here, the water became even more murky, and you can see the mangroves growing out of the rocks. The water became a lot more murky, and the visibility became very, very low. I had to stay close to my guide because that was the only way I knew where to go. His fins were the only marker for me to know where to go and not to actually get lost in the water. So you can see the visibility. You can only see not too far ahead, which tends to get a little bit scary, to be quite honest, because you don't know what type of marine life is going to be in the water. The area around here is known as Las Tintoreras for the white-tipped reef shark, so you don't know if there's going to be reef sharks around. We didn't see any reef sharks on this expedition, but you can see some of the fish. Now here we are getting closer back to the snorkeling dock. And honestly, I didn't expect to see any other marine life except for fish as we were going on, but I was proved wrong, as you will see in a few moments. Yeah, you can barely see in front of you. You can only see kind of like the dark shapes. My guide is pointing. And again, I have no idea what he's pointing at. You can't really see anything until you get a little bit closer. You can start to see now. You can start to see some of the little blobs, little dark. So he's pointing, and I just have no idea what he's pointing at, basically. And then you can start to see, as you get closer and closer, that there are rays on the bottom. So I give the guide the camera again, because he's an experienced diver. And although he didn't have diving equipment, he could hold his breath a little bit longer. So I gave him the camera, and you can see there's a whole school of spotted eagle rays and then 2 stingrays on the bottom of the ocean floor. There's probably around 15 to 20, I would say, spotted eagle rays, a whole school of them. Now you could see them from where I was once you got a little bit closer. So that's from the top or the surface as a snorkeler. You could see them a little bit closer. But you had to be right over them to see them, since the water was definitely a lot murkier and visibility was low, and they were on the bottom of the ocean. So there I am looking at the eagle rays. He gives me back the camera so I could shoot some more video of them. And we move on. My guide, like I said, he's a very experienced diver. He's from the Galapagos Islands. So he was giving some of the people around there that did not have a guide with them some information about the eagle rays. He's pointing again. There's something else to see. And again, you can't really see anything because of the visibility. And then you get closer and you can start to see there's more of those spotted eagle rays around. I'm told they're not aggressive and they typically stay right near the bottom of the ocean floor. You can see in one of my other videos when they went by, they were not very aggressive. But with any animal, they can become aggressive if you agitate them. So you do have to be careful. And I would only snorkel with a guide who is experienced in the Galapagos Islands. Again, I gave the guide the camera so he could dive a little bit further and get a closer view for all those who are watching. With the naked eye, you could see them pretty well if you were right over the rays. But with the camera, it was a little bit more difficult, so we had the guide go down and shoot them. You could see another snorkeler enjoying the view. This again is a popular place because it's right near the dock and you don't necessarily need a guide to go there. Most places in the Galapagos you actually need a guide to go to many of the places because they want to make sure that you respect the rules of the nature. So after we saw those rays, it was time to head back to the snorkeling dock. And here we are. I hope you enjoyed the tour.